बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम।
अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर अशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह अशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदर रसूलुल्लाह अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदर रसूलुल्लाह hayya alas salah hayya alas salah hayya alal falah hayya alal falah Allahu Akbar Allahu Akbar La ilaha illallah
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم As we start, I want to remind everyone to please remember those who are sick or having any other difficulty, especially our Imam in Auckland and the little girl that I mentioned in Srinagar. Please remember them. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And they ask you about revelation. Say the revelation is by the commandment of my Lord, and of knowledge you are given but a little. Next one is chapter 41, verse 53. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق أولم يكف بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد. We will soon show them our signs throughout the universe and among their own people until it is quite clear to them that it is the truth. Is it not enough that your Lord is a witness over all things? That was chapter 41, verse 53. Next one is chapter 58, verse 11. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قيل لكم تفسحوا في المجالس فافسحوا يفسح الله لكم وإذا قيل انشزوا فانشزوا يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات والله بما تعملون خبير. O you who believe, and it goes on and says other things, and and it says, and Allah will exalt those of you who believe and those who are given knowledge, high ranks, and Allah is aware of what you do. And the next one is chapter 20, verse 114. Chapter 20, verse 114. فَتَعَالَى اللَّهُ الْمَلِكُ الْحَقُّ وَلَا تَعْجَلْ بِالْقُرْآنِ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يُقْضَى إِلَيْكَ وَحْيُهُ وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Supremely exalted then is Allah, the King, the Truth. And make not haste with the Quran before its revelation is made. Before its revelation is made complete to you. And pray, my Lord, increase me in knowledge. I have recited these verses, and the common theme you might have noticed is throughout is knowledge. And I want to look at two sets of Muslims. Those who obeyed these verses of the Holy Quran, like this prayer. Oh Allah, increase me in knowledge. Or another one which says, Allah exalts those who gain knowledge. Now, these people in what is called the medieval ages for Europe, what they did was that they had certain problems. What are those problems? If someone dies, how do we calculate his inheritance in the sense of who gets what? As you know, in the Holy Quran, proportions are mentioned and this and that and so on. But how do you calculate? Guess what Muslims did? A gentleman called Al-Khwarizmi invented algebra, the unknown algebra. In Pakistan, when I was at school, they used to say algebra. Jabr means force in Urdu. We used to say algebra means you're forced to study this subject, but algebra actually means the unknown, calculating the unknown, finding the unknown. So he invented, created a whole branch of mathematics to deal with an Islamic problem. The Holy Quran says inheritance is divided in this way. How are we going to figure it out? How are we going to work it out? And they continue to do this. What is called the modern imperial scientific method, Muslims invented it. Muslims astronomers and geographers and mathematicians, and they were motivated by problems in Islam, you might say Sharia, but in Islam, and how they can be solved. You go from Medina to Baghdad. How do you find out in which direction you should be praying? How do you find the times of prayers? You go from Baghdad to Samarkand. From Samarkand, you go to Peking. How are you going to do that? I don't know if I said this. The gentleman was Al-Khwarizmi who invented algebra. So how do you do these things? And what they did was they studied nature. They gained knowledge. They studied astronomy and geography and physics and so on to solve these problems. How do we fix times of prayers? How do we fix the direction of prayer? They didn't just say, go out and look at the moon with your own eyes and start Ramadan and finish Ramadan and so on. They actually set about creating, developing new knowledge, new even topics, new subjects, like the example I gave of algebra. To solve these problems, dates of Islamic calendar, how do you determine them? It's a lunar-based calendar. This is why they use astronomy. And that is why those people contributed significantly to increase in knowledge. They took one verse, not a verse of the Holy Quran, they took a hadith. It's both in Bukhari and Muslim. And it says that there is no disease that God has created except that He has also created its treatment. So what did they do? They invented dissection. And that is cutting of dead bodies to see why someone died. What a physician could have done to cure that disease. You see what I'm saying? That we say that, we should follow the Holy Quran. They were following the Holy Quran. And the interesting thing is that they didn't reject non-Muslims. All these people weren't Muslims. All these people weren't Arabs. What did they do? They sent out scouts to seek out the most brilliant minds throughout Europe. They didn't care about their religion. They didn't care whether the man was a Jew or a Christian or whatever. When they heard there was a top mathematician, they sent a man. They brought him to Baghdad. They said, you sit here and you work and we'll pay you salary. Very similar to a system that the British government, it still has it in part, but it was called the Highly Skilled Migrants Program, where people with specialist skills applied and they were brought into Britain, and highly qualified doctors and scientists and computer scientists and whatever else you've got. And they did the same thing. And again, I stress the fact that they did not care about anyone's religion. The question was, we've got a problem in physics, we are stuck with it. And they asked a simple question. Do we know of a famous physicist? Let's go get him. Let's ask him to solve our problem. Now let us compare that. They didn't just use new things that others invented, but set about inventing new things themselves. And then what happened? What happened was that the Turkish Khalifa banned use of the printing press. If a printing press was found in your home, you were executed. Actually, if a Holy Quran, which had been printed on a printing press, was found in your home, you were executed. If some other book was found, you were only sent to jail. And you know how long that law remained in force? Was it 1 year? Was it 5 years? Was it 10 years? 350 years. Remember, we talk about Turkey, but it wasn't just Turkey. It included all the countries, from starting with Turkey and all the way down to and including Saudi Arabia and also Egypt. Other Muslim rulers, they may not have been directly ruled, but they also paid homage to the Khalifa in Istanbul. Even the Mughal emperors of India used to write a letter to the Turkish Khalifa saying, I am XYZ and I seek your permission to rule India in your name. I mean, the Khalifa never said no. He wouldn't have mattered if he'd said no, but he never did. There wasn't a lot he could do about it. But anyway, so for 350 years, the printing press and all printed books were banned in all Islamic countries. And during those 350 years, what was happening? Galileo was writing, Newton was writing, and many others. But Muslims could not read those books. In the early 20th century, Iranian Shia ulama, they banned learning of foreign languages. In India, Muslim scholars banned learning of English and going to non-madrasa schools and learning mathematics and physics and other subjects. It was declared, ulama are quick with their fatwas of kufr, of heresy. Anyone who does this becomes a heretic. You learn English, you become heretic. You learn mathematics, you become heretic. You learn physics, you become a heretic. And this continued until the 1960s. Saudi ulama, so those were Iranians were Shia ulama, these are Sunni ulama. Actually, this happened in India as well. Photography was invented, it was unlawful, it was haram. Sound recording was invented, it was unlawful, it was haram. This was the fatwa of the Indian so-called scholars. Well, maybe harsh, but I prefer to call them the Indian ignorants rather than Indian scholars. I don't know what level of their scholarship was. Until 1960s, Saudis, again Sunnis, they banned any attempt at modernization, considering it to be an evil innovation. They opposed the introduction of electricity, radio, TV, internet. In fact, they opposed the installation of telephones. There's a famous incident someone told me who was in Saudi Arabia at the time, that the king had telephone installed and everyone knew this person was in Medina or somewhere, and the king rang him and he wanted a fatwa from the ulama, and he said to ulama, talk to this man, and they said, he's in Medina, how can we talk to him? And he said, but on this gadget. And they put it to their ear and immediately threw it. An implement of the devil, they said. This can't be allowed in the holy country of Saudi Arabia. So the king picked up the phone and he said to the guy at the other end, please recite the kalima. And he handed the phone back to the so-called scholars and said, listen to him. And the man was reciting the kalima. And the king said, well, the devil has now embraced Islam. So this thing has now become Islamic. And he then started installing telephones. There used to be no electricity in Makkah or Medina. When pilgrims went there, they would stumble about in complete darkness and so on. And it was the Indian Muslims, actually it was Ahmadi Muslims, who went to Saudi Arabia for a Hajj. And they said to the king, look, this new thing's been invented where you press a button and now it becomes day. And he was curious. And they then installed electricity and lit up the Holy Kaaba and the Holy Prophet's mosque and so on. But can you believe, until 1960s, this is nothing. In 2015, a sheikh, the Saudi sheikh, declared that the fact that Earth orbits the sun is heresy. Earth is stationary and does not move. Presumably, he is relating the old Christian belief that the Earth is stationary and the whole of the universe is revolving round the Earth. But let's go back to the Holy Quran. When we say follow the Holy Quran, what do we mean by that? Is it just for fasting and ritual prayers? When we say Islam is a deen, and we say, well, deen means it's not a religion, it's a complete way of life. Is that deen just for nikah and funeral rites? In how many months a woman should not marry after divorcing or becoming a widow, and how much haq mehr she should claim? Is it just about that? If Islam is a deen, if the Holy Quran is a complete code then there should be some instruction in there in the Quran and Hadith. What happens when you fall ill? And the Holy Prophet said, do research, find treatment. There is no disease that doesn't have a treatment. In other words, if you don't know it, go and find it. So these verses, they include research and they include advancement of knowledge. And what I've done is I've tried to compare two sets of Muslims. Early Muslims who understood this, who understood what was meant by the Holy Quran being a complete code. I'll give you 3 or 4 examples. X has passed away, inheritance has to be calculated, or for that matter, when zakat was to be calculated, but algebra was actually invented, I think, for inheritance. How do we calculate that? And the man sits down and invents a new branch of mathematics that is still used 1200, 1300 years later. And all the other things that I mentioned. And the later so-called ulama, they forgot what the Quran being a code of life meant. They forgot what Islam being deen meant. And they interpreted and applied everything in the narrowest possible sense. And all you have to do is just compare the two sets of Muslims and see whether what I'm saying is correct or whether what the others are saying is correct. Who succeeded? Those Muslims 1,000, 1,200 years ago, or the Muslims of today? So when we say the Holy Quran is a code, when we say Islam is a deen, what it means is that just like those Muslims used physics and astronomy and mathematics and medical sciences and anatomy and so on to give effect to the verses of the Holy Quran, and that made them successful. We will only be successful if we do the same thing, if we follow their example. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم إنه تعالى جواد كريم ملك رؤوف رحيم. Thank you for that. People waving their arms about. I thought they were threatening to punch me, but they were actually reminding me that I'd forgotten to deliver the second khutbah. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له واشهد ان لا اله الا الله واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم، واخذل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. Ready?
Yep.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, qad qamatis salat, qad qamatis salat. Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Ihdinas siratal mustaqim, siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Ara'aita allazi yukazzibu bid-din fadhalika allazi yad'ul yatim wala yahuddu 'ala ta'amil miskin. Fawailul lil musallin allazina hum an salatihim sahun allazina hum yura'una wa yamna'una al-ma'un. Allahu Akbar. Sami'allahu liman hamida.
ربنا
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Ihdinas siratal mustaqim, siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Inna a'tainakal kautsar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده.
ربنا
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أستغفر الله. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا Thank you for joining us for our Friday service. Keep praying through the week that may God protect the whole of humanity and help those who might be in difficulty, regardless of their color, creed, religion, or sect. Until we meet again, I take my leave of you. Assalamu alaikum. Khuda Hafiz. Goodbye.